In this lesson, we're going to talk about what it takes to back up and restore a set of BizTalk databases. And because of all the interaction between the BizTalk databases, we'll need to be aware of the precautions that we need to take to maintain a stable environment. The main thing that you want to keep in mind when you're thinking about backing up and restoring the BizTalk databases is that BizTalk maintains consistent state by governing any interactions between the databases with distributed transactions. So you'll need to make sure that your backup and restore procedures will retain that consistency. And while it might be tempting to rely on SQL Server mirroring, that approach is actually not supported for backing up BizTalk databases. And that's because SQL Server mirroring does not support distributed transactions. So we need to take another approach. And fortunately, BizTalk provides a set of SQL agent jobs that can perform these transactionally consistent backups and restores. And they might seem complex when you see them for the first time, but it might help to know that these jobs are intended to facilitate communication between a live server and a standby server. With the SQL agent backup job running on the live server and writing the backup data to a network share and keeping track of each of those backups in a history table in the live BizTalk management database. The standby servers then would be running another set of SQL agent jobs that are constantly monitoring the backup history table in the live BizTalk management database, and using that information to locate the latest backup files that it should apply to the standby databases to bring them current. So you can certainly back up and restore the BizTalk databases without making use of a standby server, but it might make it easier to understand what BizTalk is providing if you know that the backup and restore SQL agent jobs are designed to support a standby server. The BizTalk backup job is actually disabled by default, but if you enable it, it's configured with a default schedule to perform a full backup once per day and to perform transaction log backups every 15 minutes. And you can adjust those settings up or down based on the requirements of your environment, as well as the hardware capacity that you have available. And finally, you'll want to make sure that those SQL agent jobs run under an ID that is part of the BTS backup users role, which BizTalk sets up when it creates the databases. So BizTalk's backup scheme then is based on transaction log shipping, and you'll find very good documentation and even articles on the web if you search on the term configuring BizTalk log shipping. So I mentioned that if you enable BizTalk's SQL agent backup job, that it's configured to perform a full backup once per day, and then to perform transaction log backups every 15 minutes, with the intention that all of those backups would be stored on a reliable network share. Now, in order to maintain the consistent state across all of the databases, the SQL agent job will start by opening a new distributed transaction that will include the core BizTalk databases, and it will allow any in-process operations to complete. And at the same time, it will block any new distributed transactions until it can insert a mark into each of the database transaction logs, indicating the exact point at which the backup was taken. And when it completes that step, it will end the transaction, and it will no longer block new transactions. When the BizTalk backup job runs, it will back up a number of databases, and those include the BAM primary import database, the BizTalk DTA database or tracking database, the BizTalk management database, any message box databases, as well as the rule engine database and the single sign-on database. Be aware, however, that it will not back up any of the other BAM databases, such as the BAM archive or the BAM star schema databases, as well as the SQL analysis databases. This slide is presenting a high-level view of the restore procedure. So this is what would be happening automatically if you set up the BizTalk restore jobs to run on a standby server. The standby server would maintain a connection to the live BizTalk management database, and as it sees that new backups of the live server have completed, it's going to read that data from the network file share and perform a restore. Now, as it performs those restores, it's going to do so with the no recovery option enabled. So that means that the standby database would be inoperable, but that also allows it to continue to apply new log backups as they come available. So in a default configuration, The restore job would receive a full backup once per day, and it would receive the log backups every 15 minutes. When a need does arrive to bring the standby databases online, there is a third SQL agent job that can be run manually, and that one will restore any transactions prior to the stop mark transaction that you specify. And in this case, that will happen with the recovery option enabled. So once that's complete, the database can be made available. You will, however, have to point the BizTalk servers in the group to the new database servers. And you can find the details for those steps in the BizTalk documentation. And if you are going to perform a restore manually, you will need to make sure that these three things happen in this sequence. Whether you implement these steps in a custom script of your own, or you install and use the scripts for the SQL agent restore jobs. In this demonstration, I'll show you how to run BizTalk's SQL agent job to back up the databases. Then I'll delete the databases, and then restore them manually, and after that, restart the BizTalk group and verify that everything is up and running. Okay, so here we are in SQL Server Management Studio. And we need to find this SQL agent job to perform the backup. And there it is, it's called Backup BizTalk Server. Now we'll need to configure its properties. And we need to visit the steps page so that we can set the path name for the backup files. We'll need to do that in the backup full step. So we'll replace this text with the actual path name. And in reality, we would be backing this up to a share somewhere on a network. Okay, and we also need to set the path for the mark and backup log step. So once again, we replace the existing text with the actual path. Now, if we look at the clear backup history step, we can see that it's going to maintain 14 days of backup history. So we're free to change that, but 14 days is the default length. All right, let's look at the schedule for this job. By default, it's configured to perform a full backup once a day. It's scheduled to back up the logs every 15 minutes. For the sake of this exercise, I'm going to configure a one-time backup, and that will run as soon as I enable the job. Okay, let's accept these settings. Now I can enable the job by right-clicking and choosing Enable. So that succeeded. Now I'm going to start the job. Okay, it looks like everything went well, so I'll close this. Alright, now that the backup is complete, let's delete the existing databases so we can try to restore them. Before we do that though, we need to stop the Enterprise Single Sign-On service. Okay, that stopped. Alright, so all of the databases that we're going to delete are at the bottom of this list. Let's see, we have BAM primary import, BizTalk message box 2, BizTalk DTA, BizTalk management database, BizTalk message box, rule engine, and SSO. Okay, we'll delete all of those. And now they're gone. If we go to the administration console and try to refresh the BizTalk group, we're going to get an error message specifying that our login failed. Okay, well let's restore the databases and then come back and see if that works the next time around. Okay, we're going to do a manual restore here, so I'm going to right-click and then choose Restore. And this first one will be the BAM primary import database. So we need to specify the location of our backed up data. And we'll take the BAM primary import backup from the All Files demo code folder. Alright, I'm going to opt to overwrite the existing database to ensure that this succeeds. Alright, that looks good. Now we need to repeat those steps for the messagebox-2 database. And once more for the BizTalk management database. And again for the initial messagebox database. Once more for the rule engine database. And finally, one last time for the SSO database. Alright, the databases are back, so now we should be able to go back to the BizTalk administration console. And if we refresh the BizTalk group, everything is back as it should be. In this lab, you'll have a chance to try out the steps on your own to configure BizTalk's SQL Agent backup job, and then to schedule the backup, and after it completes, remove the databases, and after that, restore them, and after that's complete, verify that the system is back up and running by testing an application.